this year's Boulder Economic Summit. Two of Boulder's strongest economic indicators are low unemployment and high educated workforce. As our economy continues to flourish, companies are increasingly dependent on a robust pipeline of new talent. Sustaining Boulder's economic vitality requires a strong talent pipeline of education, workforce training, internships, and apprenticeships. Our speaker and panelists today will offer valuable insights into programs here in Boulder and in Colorado that help build the talent pipeline in Colorado to meet the needs of businesses and industries and address the potential gaps in the workforce. Building the talent pipeline will begin with a presentation by Dean David Eikenberry about the topic from CU Boulder's perspective, followed by short presentations by our panelists from Boulder Valley School District, Ball Aerospace, Front Range Community College, and Galvanize. We are intending to leave ample time for question and answer because we truly want this breakout to be a dialogue between the attendees and the presenters. The full bios of the presenters are found in your program for reference. At this time, I would like to welcome Dean David Eikenberry to the podium. Dean Eikenberry has been the Dean of the Lee School of Business at CU Boulder since 2011. Welcome, Dean.
Good morning, and thank you very much. I'm going to try to make my comments brief and maybe open up a little bit more time for us to work as a small group. I'm going to talk to you as the Dean of a business school, and I want to kind of reflect a little bit on what our business school is trying to do. I want to kind of share with you the perspective that we have today. CU has a rich tradition of contributing to the human capital of the state of Colorado, but also to our country. The United States is by far and away, if you look at higher education as an industry, we are the kingpin in higher education as a country. We send a few students, for example, overseas to study full-time. But let's take China as an example. We might send, let's suppose we send 10,000 students from U.S. high schools into China to study. We will receive in the other direction probably 100 to 1,000 times that level. In other words, we are the Boeing aircraft, what we do, and so we are in a dominant position. We have a dominant industry. I only share that perspective because we really have an incredible legacy that we're talking about here. And that applies to, of course, to our university, 5 Nobel Prizes, 8 MacArthur Genius Grants, just an incredible array of horsepower. If you look at CU Boulder and you look at the impact of knowledge creation, at the end of the day, the university does two things: knowledge creation and knowledge dissemination. On the creation side of the ledger, that's hard to measure. Any metric you come up with noisy. But for example, if you look at the metric that's tied to the number of citations that work out of CU Boulder earns, and you compare that to Harvard, MIT, go down the list, Boulder shows up as roughly number, I think it's either number 14 or 15 in the world, not the United States, in the world. Of course, the U.S. is, again, as I shared, 1% of that. We are amongst the universities that are a part of a country club, if you will, called the AAU, the Association of American Universities. There's only 62 universities in North America, 60 in the U.S., 2 in Canada. Over the next 20 years, that'll change as China, for example, or Tsinghua, for example, becomes eligible to be considered for that list. But Boulder is on that list, has been on that list for over 50 years. Enough about the university. Let's talk about the business school. The business school has been contributing in Boulder, the city of Boulder, the county of Boulder has been participating in this global human capital preparation race in a business school kind of sense, just like the campus has been. When you walk down Pearl Street, every now and then, and I wish I could remember which storefront it is in front of, but you'll notice that you'll remember that there are these stanchions, and then there's this picture of what the street looked like in the 1880s. Remember, you probably remember what I'm talking about. Next time you're walking down, look at one of those stanchions, and you'll see a brick building, literally across the way, and painted on the side of that building it says Boulder Business School. This is in the 1880s. Business schools in the 1880s were not university concepts. Those were small businesses that taught what we thought business school meant. But in the early 1900s, business schools merged onto college campuses. And the University of Colorado was one of the very first universities to make that move. We moved off of Pearl Street. There's probably no relationship to who we are and what that Pearl Street picture shows. But the Boulder Regents enabled our school, our college that we are today in 1906, which makes us the 8th oldest business school in the United States. The University of Denver also came up around that same time. So there clearly was something going on in the business community that said, we want business schools to be on an academic platform. And again, they weren't following what 500 other universities were doing. These would have been the only platforms out here in this side of the country. And so I always reflect on that. We in Boulder have been at the forefront of higher education, including business education, for over a century. Today, our business school, let's just kind of fast forward many, many years. Our business school today, my business school that I'm a part of, and some of my colleagues are with me today, we are pursuing a different agenda, a new agenda. We are positioning ourselves to really be amongst one of our nation's great business schools. I quip, and my colleagues get a little tired of hearing this quip. But there are 30 business schools in the U.S. And the U.S. is the dominant provider of business school education. There are a handful around the world, but the U.S. is really still the main action. There's 30 business schools in the U.S. that claim they're in the top 20. We weren't all math majors when we put that together. But my punchline is that we are positioning ourselves to have full rights and privileges to being amongst that 30. And I use that quip as it's not really clear what the top 20 means. Top 20 in what? Top 20 how? But put that aside. What we're talking about is an aspiration of putting us in a global, certainly national metric for success. And we've been on this agenda for about 4 years now. So what does that mean? What does it mean? It means a couple of things. The first thing is we're going to compete at a level that is consistent with the University of Illinois, where I came from, with Ohio State, with the University of Texas at Austin. So while this feels like a comfortable regional campus to you, we're going to fight a very aggressive campaign to provide talent across the U.S. and to the world. Our research record right now continues to improve. Rated on just an aggregate flow, we're 54th, 58th in the U.S. On a per capita basis, we're number 39 in the U.S. right now. In terms of our scholarship, in terms of the classes that we teach, we're doing some amazing things, and I want to share a little bit more of that with you in a minute. But we are really working to create a business school that others will actually copy, others will emulate. That what we invent and what we deliver here really is truly best in class and makes us worthy of what we're trying to accomplish. So I'll give you an example of one of the things we're trying to do, and some of you might write this down as shameless, ruthless self-promotion. But one of the things that I focused on, and I noticed in the back of the room, is my colleague Steve Lee, who is a partner in crime with me. Steve is the dean of our College of Arts and Sciences, which by far is the single largest college our campus, certainly measured by the population of undergraduates under Steve's wing. We wanted to create a business experience for kids in the humanities to better prepare them for society, to make them better equipped to have job interviews. And we wanted to do the same thing for the scientists and engineers, some of them who might be working for Ball Corporation, for example. We produce some of the best engineers in the world out of this campus. And we will continue to do that. But what if we could equip them with a very efficient and very effective business experience that was accessible in scale, was affordable, and was the right kind of pedagogy at the right time. And so we came up with a business minor that on the surface actually looks closer to executive education, not in terms of its content or its age or whatever, but rather very intentional instruction. I want you to learn this now because then that links into this, which links into this. So in other words, we can really compress the learning experience because we're metering out and measuring it out so carefully. So Steve was a very, very strong supporter of this program. John Hayes, the CEO of Ball Corporation, was a very forceful voice for support, as well as several other CEOs in the area. 2 years ago, this idea of creating a business minor for students who weren't even in the College of Business, that was just kind of an interesting idea. Today, we have over 600 students registered in this program. This fall, we'll have 750 students. On January 1st, we'll have 900 students in this program. In another 2 or 3 years, we'll have 1,500 students in this program, and we'll be running at a run rate in terms of graduating 750 students a year who've had this really rich and bona fide experience. 750 students a year. That is the size of my freshman class. So essentially, I am doubling my footprint with this pretty exciting and vibrant program. And again, creating a more valuable aerospace engineer for the Ball Corporation because they still have that scientific horsepower, but they actually have some of the language of business. So that's an example of what I think of as really best in class. We didn't copy this model from Maryland. We didn't copy this from Notre Dame. We really thought it through. And that's an example of the kind of leadership that I think my faculty and my colleagues are trying to live up to. And which I hope that you as business partners here in Boulder County can rely on more and more. And I hope, and we love to hear your feedback in terms of the kind of students you're getting. We've also really rethought the undergraduate experience here in the Lead School. This really gets to the question of this particular session, which is how are we rethinking the talent of the future? We have really rethought it. Let me back up for just a second. I'm about a $40 million business. I really think of myself as a business not that different from you. A $40 million business. 80% of revenue comes into my business through 5 different channels. 4 of those channels make up 20%, and the 5th channel makes up 80%. So the first 4 channels would be revenue from the state of Colorado. It's an important number, but it's an ever-shrinking number. And if you look over the next 20 years, it's not clear that that number is going to rise that much. Grants is an opportunity. It's not a big opportunity in business schools whatsoever, just because of the nature of our business. Gifts and endowments are a huge part of what we do, and they will ever be an increasing force. But today, all 4 of those pipes add up to 20%. If 80% of your revenue comes through one activity, you must be awesome at that activity. I'm quoting one of my colleagues, Katie Connor, and she likes that word awesome. So we will be awesome in undergraduate education. We will be dominant, and we are on our way to doing that right now. That is teaching. 80% of our revenue comes through the activity of teaching, which is the collection of tuition through direct and indirect means. And so we are really rethinking that undergraduate learning experience. If you think about the letter T, the horizontal part, capital T, the horizontal part of the T and the vertical part of the T. Universities are almost to a T organized on the vertical component. I was trained as a finance professor, and I was promoted, successfully promoted, on the quality of my contribution to the literature and finance. In other words, that's a vertical promotion cycle. But the career paths of our students are not vertical much anymore. Yes, we still have majors, we're still emphasizing the vertical component, but almost all of you in this room are more concerned about the horizontal part of that letter T. And I, as a faculty member, are not incentivized to think about that. So one of the things that we are doing as a college is really continuing to think through what does the horizontal part mean? Because we need to prepare our students to walk across the organizations that are part of it. For example, if they stay at Ball for years, they're certainly not, they're probably just not going to go straight up a vertical within Ball. They're probably going to go, they're going to probably circulate in some kind of a spiral. We need to be better preparing our students. You have told us this issue and over, and that includes both inside the classroom but outside the classroom as well. So we're actually adopting what we think of as the whole student experience, which is taking ownership for that stuff outside the classroom. For example, we have one of the largest mentoring programs in the United States. Other universities and even some companies are actually looking at how we are taking ownership of that whole package. We're sending more kids abroad, even if they want to work here in Boulder. I just got back from Brazil on Monday to take 20 undergraduates abroad so that I can put my money where my mouth is on this issue. So we're really trying to think through how do we create a better equipped person to work in your organization. Another key part of this is how we're actually structuring the curriculum altogether. You know, it's been said that altering curriculum in a university is the second most difficult thing mankind can undertake, and I know Steve would agree with that comment. The first most difficult thing, it's been argued, is to move a cemetery. So we've moved a lot of bodies around in the lead school to think about this horizontal component. And one of the things we're doing is putting a tremendous amount of learning, business learning, into the freshman year and the sophomore year to create an integrated learning experience so that you actually know how to put the marketing and the finance and the accounting all together, as opposed to treating those as discrete verticals. At the end of the sophomore year, you're going to be able to get students who are far better at interning your company because they actually have a broader understanding of what it means to be a business school student. Our completion rates are going to go up. Our pride in the institution is going to go up. Our time to graduation is going to go down. They are going to be better prepared to enter your workforce. They know how to shake hands. They know how to look you in the eye. We are going to be providing a curriculum that allows that kind of stuff to happen more organically. So I really hope you have confidence in the kind of talent that we're recreating. I'll leave you with one other idea. I talked about how we are trying to create a new business school that competes with the best in the country, with the Notre Dames, the UVAs, the UCLAs, the USCs, the University of Washingtons, just go down the list, the Big Ten, the Pac-12. But what does that mean for Boulder? Are we just going to be another pretty face in the Pac-10 or the Big 12, Pac-12? I think the short answer is no. We need to do something that is also unique and appropriate for Boulder. If you were to think about it from a comparative advantage or disadvantage approach, it would be, what is it that we can do that the University of Maryland College Park is simply not going to be able to do? And that is going to be leveraging entrepreneurship, innovation, and design. We are moving down a path where we need to figure out a way to drive that in. And yes, we teach, we're actually one of the leaders in the United States in terms of entrepreneurship education. This year we will teach close to 4,000 credit hours in entrepreneurship. We will work more in thinking about how is it that you teach innovation. I'm not sure anybody knows how to think about that. And design thinking, for those of you who are aware of design thinking, it's just a shockingly interesting idea, which we agree with. If you haven't heard design thinking, business design, I really encourage you to think about it. We are going to be working to build a student for you who knows how to think creatively and innovatively. Yes, we'll be teaching that in the classroom, but just as the whole student experience is an idea that we're driving, we want to create a workforce of students who can serve as consultants for your startup business, for your ongoing business, to help you to be a source of talent, to create an experiential learning environment for those students in a way that's accessible to you, particularly if you're not a large revenue, large scale enterprise, or maybe you're a high school district. We have tremendous needs that we're going to need to partner with you in a way that we have not done before. It's an exciting time to be in the business school. There's a lot more I could share, but I look forward to hearing my panelists kind of contribute a little bit more, and I certainly look forward to entertaining some questions here. Thanks for coming this morning.
Thank you, Dean Eikenberry. We are lucky to have a diverse array of panelists today, and you can read a little bit more about them in the program, but we're going to get started with our panelists. And we have Andrew Moore, the CIO from Boulder Valley School District. We have Vicki Schiff, the Vice President of Human Resources from Ball Aerospace and Technology Corp. We have Andy Dorsey, the President of Front Range Community College. And we have Jeff Dean, the Lead Instructor and Director of Curriculum for Galvanize. Thank you all for coming. So Andrew, would you please start us out today and share with us your perspective on building the talent pipeline?
Great, I'm happy to. First, I'm going to start with a question. How many of you have children in the K-12 system? Not necessarily Boulders, but somewhere. All right, well, first I want to thank you because you have a very integral part in building the talent pipeline that we run through our school district. And although I can't graduate your students in 6 years, as I learned this morning, as CU's kind of, I think, norm or average, it takes me 13 years to get students through the K-12 system. It's a very important time to spark interest in our students. Boulder Valley Schools educates 30,000 students every single day. So we're roughly the same size as CU in what we do. We're just affecting that talent at an earlier age. We have 10 high schools that we graduate from. 6 of them you probably know, the Fairviews, the Boulders, Centaurus, Monarch High School, Broomfield, and Netherland. But we also have schools that are online. Justice High helps those students that have gotten a little bit off track, but we want them to graduate, so we have special programs for them. Peak to Peak is one of our charter schools that is nationally recognized, as is Fairview, with high success rates. With that, we have a very diverse set of students that we have to help get that interest. So I'm going to focus on a few items here that we're in partnership with, really more on the technology side, to try to get students interested in engineering, computer science, mathematics. We have one program with CU called the CU Tech Partnership, and it allows students that are up here at CU in math or science to come into our district, not because they want to become teachers necessarily, but they come in and they help teach math and science to spark that energy and excitement in our students that are trying to figure it out. We have something called Project Extreme, which is another CU partnership with CU grad students that come in and actually help with curriculum in the STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. Out of the computer science department, there's a couple of wonderful programs. One is with an application called Agent Sheets. Has anybody heard of Agent Sheets? Agent Sheets is a programming language developed here at CU. It's a gaming language. It is now being used in many of the K-12 districts throughout Colorado to spark interest in kids to learn how to program. And so the program here at CU actually trains teachers over the summer on how to teach Agent Sheets. And it's one of the things that we know sparks interest in our students to get into technology. We have a NOAA outreach program where scientists come in and actually, our students in 8th grade actually go to NOAA every year from every middle school. And once again, to sit down with the scientists to understand what they do to help them get engaged at that level. We have partnerships with business. The biggest one is with Corden Pharma, which basically funds our science fair. And another hands-on tool that we have with our students to get engaged, actually do some research, and then present out through the science fairs. Centaurus High School's in Lafayette. It's the only one of our high schools that has a pre-engineering program. And if you graduate from that pre-engineering program, you are accepted into CU's engineering program. So for some of the kids that are coming in through that mechanism, who may not feel that college is a path for them, this gives them a path not only to a great university, but to a degree which they will certainly be able to earn a great income at as well. A couple more I want to touch on. NC-WIT, the National Computing for Women in Technology. It's also pioneered or run for the state of Colorado out of the computer science department here at CU. It is a way to spark interest with the girls in our system who may not consider engineering or computer science, not because they don't have the talent, but because it's such a male-dominated profession that they just don't go that way. I was fortunate to be at the NC-WIT Awards this year. There were about 35 awardees. These are girls that had submitted projects. They were winners from that. It's already opening doors for many of them as they pursue their technology pursuits. And then the last thing I want to mention is a program that is near and dear to my heart, and that is closing the digital divide. So we have a problem in our school district. You would think that Boulder and the Boulder area, Louisville, Lafayette, Superior, Erie, Nederland, for the most part, is an affluent community. I think we all know that. We looked around, but there is a sizable population that is on free and reduced lunch, that goes home to no internet. Some of those students don't have a phone. So I want you just to think for a second, what if you didn't have your phone for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week? How would you function in the society today that we heard about earlier this morning on instant information and being able to rate our talents? You would feel left out. We have that problem in the district, and so we have a program right now that we've just launched this year called One for Web. Some school districts call it One for One, but this is getting a device in every student's hand. We call it One for Web because frankly, we don't care what the device is. We don't care if it's an iPad or a Chromebook or a phone. What we care about is that every student has the ability to connect to the internet and actually engage in society. That if you don't believe it's already in the electronic age, it is, and we need it to function. The pilot this year was at Centaurus High School. I funded it for 4 years so that every incoming freshman is getting a Chromebook, and we're providing professional development for all the teachers so that they know how to change their teaching practices to be able to differentiate and allow the students to get a hold of the information they need to learn. We're expanding the program to Broomfield High School next year, and over the next 4 years we'll be providing students with those Chromebooks. My challenge is I need $2.2 million a year to expand it across the district, and our plan is to do that. K2 will get tablets, and then starting in 3rd grade they'll get Chromebooks to shrink and eliminate the digital divide. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. We're just going to move down the line. Vicki, if you could share your perspective on building the talent pipeline.
Certainly. So I'm happy to be in Boulder where I don't have to explain to anyone that Ball does not make mason jars. It's nice to be here where you say Ball, people know what you're talking about. So for Ball Aerospace and Ball Corporation as a whole, building the pipeline, and specifically a diverse pipeline, is our #1 goal. It's getting harder and harder, especially in technology, to hire diverse females at every race and also to bring them to Colorado. We've had some recent discussions where we talked about, we don't understand it because this is Boulder. Who doesn't want to come to Boulder? But then when you start really thinking about all the materials you put together and the promotional pieces that say, come to Colorado, you can river raft, you can hike, you can ski. Well, that's great, but we're not sure that that actually interests all races and genders. So we have to think a little bit more broadly. For aerospace specifically, it is even more imperative for us because Colorado itself has the largest number of private sector aerospace employees per capita in any state in the United States. So we want to continue that, and we feel like we have a great obligation to do so. So as far as aerospace goes, what we do is we have quite a bit of outreach at the high schools, the middle schools, even elementary schools. This comes from our employees that want to do it. We're not asking people to do it. I have one outreach coordinator in all of aerospace. That's her job. The rest is all volunteer. And if you understand how government contracting works, that is volunteer time. You aren't paid necessarily for your time to go do that outreach. So it makes it even harder for us to get people sometimes to have an interest to go out. In this case, people want to do it, whether their kids are at schools or not. They recognize the importance of getting into kids' minds early, the importance of STEM and interest in engineering and math. From a diversity perspective, that's hard to do within Colorado. So we do a huge outreach all over the country. For aerospace, we can only hire employees that are American citizens or have a green card. So again, that makes your diversity a little bit more challenging. But we do have people that go out to all of these schools across the country to try to build our pipeline and get them interested. One of our gold standards at Ball is our internship program. We have up to 50 interns every year that we bring in from all over the country. We go to schools that are specifically diverse and try to recruit them. We pay for their relocation out here for the summer. We pay for their wages. They get a stipend. They get to work closely with the engineers. They do really cool projects. One of the coolest projects that they really enjoy is called the Burst program. And that again is a volunteer program. So on top of any engineering or any of the work that they're paid for, in their free time, they're working on a rocket, which is a joint venture that we do with ALA. And these kids build rockets that they eventually shoot off at the end of the summer, and it's hugely popular. So what we try to do, though, is make sure that anyone who's bringing in an intern is going to be able to hire them. So they have to be going into their sophomore, junior, or senior year. And if you cannot hire them at some point, then you can't bring them in. And so we really push on that to make sure that we're hiring and we're successful. We hire about half of the eligible interns we have every year. And a lot of our people that we have on staff that have been here for 10, 20 years started out as interns at Ball. So we think it's a very successful program. We'd like to grow it more. It's just a funding issue. As with every government contractor, everything's a funding issue. But I think that it's a huge opportunity and we do it well, and we need to figure out how to be more broad about diverse pipeline in the kids, in the interns, and even our regular employees that we're bringing in. But we have to think creatively because it's not as easy as it used to be. Getting clearances, which is 70% of our job, is defense related. And so we need people that can either have a clearance or can get cleared. And thanks to Mr. Snowden, it's even harder today to get cleared. It used to take about 90 days to get a clearance if you had a clean record. Now it can take up to a year. So if you're hiring someone and you need them to work and they have to have a clearance, they cannot work on something that they aren't cleared to, which means that we're paying them out of overhead dollars, and you don't want to do that. So then your challenge to bring in diverse people gets even harder. So everybody's fighting for diverse, cleared individuals that are either coming out of school or already working. But overall, I think that we're down the right path, and the fact that we have it as a #1 goal for aerospace and Ball corporate as a whole can only make it stronger in the end, and we'll be more successful in the end as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. We're just going to move down to Andy. If you could give us your perspective on building the talent pipeline.
Thanks very much. I was trying to think about whether I could build a pipeline of diverse, cleared people, but I don't think I'm going to help very much there. I do have a son who's going to be a junior next year at the Lee School of Business, so I'm excited to hear what's happening there. A daughter who's just graduating from Monroe High School in Boulder Valley, so you guys did a great job. Community colleges are, I think, one of the most misunderstood aspects of higher education, and I'll just try to bust a couple myths and tell a few of the things that we're doing right now. So we have about 30,000 credit students in a year and probably about another 10,000 non-credit students. Students we train for businesses or in specific programs to learn a specific skill. And we address the talent pipeline, I think, in 3 main ways. The first one is our technical training programs. We have about 50 different technical training programs. They range from nursing to welding to graphic design. The interesting thing about that is that the students who graduate with Associate of Applied Science degrees, it's a 2-year technical degree, are doing pretty well in the job market right now. In fact, there's a new study out called Ed Pays on the Colorado Department of Higher Education website that tracks earnings over the first 10 years of students' careers. And what you find is that students with Associate of Applied Science degrees do just about as well as any students with any other degrees in the state, at least for the first 10 years. Obviously, in the long run, we encourage everybody to get a bachelor's degree regardless of where they graduate, because that's going to be a ticket for more success. But it's surprising what a 2-year degree can do for you in terms of a career. There's clearly a demand, and when you're in Boulder, you don't hear as much of the demand for 2-year degree folks. It's a lot of knowledge economy here, and we're talking a lot more about how can we get software engineers or aerospace engineers, but in the rest of the state and in the rest of the country, there's a lot of demand for folks with technical training. Georgetown Center for Workforce talks about 30 to 40% of the new jobs being what they call middle skill jobs, which are jobs that need training above a high school degree but below a bachelor's degree. And that's a market that part of our college is really aiming for. Part of what we're trying to do is do partnerships with industry that make sure that we get the right workforce that industry needs, and a couple of examples that we've started recently are a cybersecurity program and a retail management program. The latter one came from discussions with grocery store chains, and it's really for folks who are on the floor, who are a produce clerk, who want to move up into being the manager of that department. But I want to talk specifically about one of our biggest and I think best newest programs, which is our machining program in the Advanced Technology Center we built in Longmont. That came from a growing discussion with people in industry that there were not enough skilled machinists to expand manufacturing in Colorado. And when I knew that that was a really a big need was one day I was on the golf course and someone came up to me and said, I'm a temp agency working to place machinists and I can't find anybody, you need to start a program now. I thought, well, if somebody's grabbing me on the golf course, this probably is a pretty big need. We hired somebody to go do a discussion with about 35 manufacturing companies. 85% of them said they'd hire somebody now if they could get them. One of the companies said, I keep telling machining manufacturers that I will not buy a machine unless they can give me a worker, and they never can, so I'm not buying anything. We put together an advisory committee then of 10 companies. Ball Aerospace was generous enough with their time to join. Mountainside Medical, another Boulder company, also contributed. And from that group, we put together a curriculum and also put together the core of what became a federal grant. So Front Range got a grant for about $25 million to start the machining program. That grant also funded manufacturing programs in Pueblo, in Denver, and a couple other spots in Colorado. And we opened a new lab in Longmont about a year ago. We graduated about 150 people from the program this year. About half of those were folks who were working in machining firms. Another half were people who were job seekers. 95% had jobs before they graduated from the program. We had a career fair lined up and we canceled it because they all had jobs. And you know, part of what happened was, obviously manufacturing in this country had really, really rough times. It had particularly rough times in Colorado. And there were no people entering the industry. So as people started to retire, there's a huge gap. But you can make a living wage as a machinist. In fact, some of the folks that we have teaching for us are making 6 figures as machinists. But they're so committed to, kind of like the people you were talking about, they're so committed to furthering the field that they want to come teach for us for peanuts because they really want to have a pipeline of people. That's one example of the kind of partnerships that can develop with a community college. And I don't want to in any way underestimate the value of making sure that we have the right number of bachelor's degree or master's or PhD trained engineers or scientists. Those are going to be critical for the expansion of our economy, and we need folks who are entrepreneurs. That's what starts the job engine going. But if we don't have technicians, and that's what we've heard again and again from companies, we can't get the work done. A couple other things real quick that we do. We also do non-credit partnerships where we do training at business sites. Sometimes we can get groups of business together to train jointly. An example of that was a project called Web Lab. It started with conversations with Market on Demand, Boulder-based company that does back-end software for financial services. They were training their own web developers because they couldn't find them. We wrote a grant through the H-1B program where the federal government gives you the proceeds of the money they collect from H-1B visas. They put together a grant that allowed us to develop something called Web Lab, which trained folks for a number of technology companies in the region to be web developers. We're on the 4th cycle of that, funded in part by the grant from the companies. The last thing I'll just talk about briefly is transfer education in community colleges. Many people don't realize this, but about 45% of the undergraduate freshmen in Colorado are starting at community colleges. There's about 15,000 Front Range alums in 4-year colleges in Front Range right now. We send about 500 a year to CU Boulder. And in general, they do quite well. I don't have the data for every college, but we got the data recently from CSU, and the GPAs of students who started at Front Range are almost exactly the same as the average GPA of students who are ongoing native students at CSU. And their time to graduate is about exactly the same. So community colleges are providing a great space for somebody who may not be prepared academically or emotionally to go to a large four-year school, and for folks who found themselves in a position in their life where maybe they weren't quite ready to start school at 18 for a variety of reasons, often family obligations, and needed to do something later, come back part-time. A great example is the outstanding student from our Longmont campus is a young man who was homeless for a number of years. He came to us, he tested into 7th grade math. He just finished Calc 3 and DiffEQ with flying colors. He was accepted at CU Boulder in atmospheric physics next year, and he's on his way to do something great. And that's a really crucial part of what community colleges provide in the educational system. Not all of our students are like that. I think we had 6 high school valedictorians last year at the community college. So students come from all walks of life. But that role of providing access eventually to a bachelor's degree is really critical. And just 2 last statistics about that. 2009, 20% of the people who got PhDs in this country started at community college. And the last data I saw was about 40% of students of color who graduated from medical school started in community colleges. So that access mission is a really critical part of what we're doing, I think, for the talent pipeline. So thanks.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for that example. We're going to move down to Jeff from Galvanize. If you could share with us your perspective on building the talent pipeline.
Galvanize is a company that really has 3 main pillars. We provide office space for the sort of flexible office space for startups in the tech, sort of information technology sector. We run our own venture capital fund, and we also have more formal education opportunities. On the education side, we've got a 6-month immersive full stack development course where students come 9 to 5 every day for 6 months to learn how to become software developers. We have a 3-month data science immersive run the same way, where people with typically advanced degrees in math and science come and learn how to become sort of industry-ready data scientists. And then we also run an accredited master's degree program in conjunction with the University of New Haven in data science. So it's a year-long program, also immersive. All of our programs are run the same way. Students come in every day. They work in our space with our instructors full-time the entire time we do the program. Our goal is really to be a pipeline provider, first and foremost. What we're trying to do is create a modern, urban, industry-focused education platform. And we realize that we can't do this completely in isolation. We need to be able to have students in the same building, working in the same environment, in the same culture, in the same neighborhoods as all of the types of people that they're going to be working with and the companies they're going to be working with. A great example is we'll have a member company. Maybe we've invested in a member company. They need software developers. They'll hire a software developer right out of our program. So students might go through one of our programs and then stay in the same building where they're getting a job. After they get that job, maybe the company grows, they hire more people. They now have started to amass huge amounts of data, and they need to figure out how can we make the best decisions about this. And so maybe they'll hire one of the students from our data science programs. Maybe that same student will come back and take another 3-month immersive data science program and graduate from that, maybe get a pay bump. And in the meantime, we bring industry partners, for example, maybe someone from TriNet will come in, and they'll just have office hours, and they'll literally just sit at the desk in the middle of one of our floors, and they'll just put a whiteboard up and say 9 a.m., 9:30 a.m., and people can just sign up for free and come and talk to them about what is it like to, once I hit 50 people, what do I have to do in my startup? We'll have students coming in and saying, hey, what kind of software engineers are you hiring? So far, we're based in Denver. We have 2 locations in Denver. We have 1 location in Boulder where I spend most of my time. We also have a campus in San Francisco and Seattle. We're opening one in Fort Collins shortly, and soon to be Austin and several other tech centers around the country.
Our placement rates so far have been phenomenal. Of the graduates of the full stack program, 98% of them have been placed into developer positions within 3 months of graduation. The mean salary is $79,000 a year, and the median is $73,000. Of the full stack software development program that we've been running, for almost every one of our classes, we've had 48% or higher women in the program. One of our main goals is to de-homogenize the tech industry. And it turns out that that's as we've been hearing, it's a tall order. It's a hard problem to solve. And it starts with admissions and outreach, and it finishes with the type of culture and community that you build in your classroom, with the types of partners you have that can help provide access, with training on diversity and inclusion. And we take all of those very seriously. We build those into every sort of aspect of our business, including providing event and meeting space for organizations like Women Who Code and Rails Bridge, which are free weekend workshops for women to learn how to code. And we like to think of ourselves as being predominantly driven by industry. And in the software world, that's super hard. My voice is a little hoarse and I'm a little bit tired right now because the last few nights I've been up till 2 or 3 o'clock, mostly working. Turns out that the tech industry changes every day, all the time. And we are constantly evolving the curriculum because in our conversations with hiring partners and interviewing people who didn't hire our graduates, interviewing people who did hire our graduates, talking to our graduates about what they're working on, we're constantly amassing data about what's important in the industry right now, and then changing our curriculum so that we can graduate students in 6 months that we think are going to be ready for the types of things that they're going to be needing to do in 6 months. And in the tech world, you might think like 6 months, what can change in 6 months? But it's massive. The curriculum that we're running today is a completely different curriculum than I started with 1.5 years ago in Boulder. And it will be another curriculum in another 1.5 years. Of course, there are the shared computer science fundamentals that we teach that will likely not change for a little while, though with new chip design and everything else we know is and we make sure that at every step of our program, we're aligning what we're doing with what people need in the industry. So as part of the 6-month immersive curriculum, we'll have students work on effectively sort of like contract projects, but they're for free, where we'll contract member companies or local nonprofits to say, hey, what kind of software would you like to have built for free? If you'll put a little bit of time into helping our students figure out what that is, we'll try to get our students to build software. We can't guarantee anything, but so far every one of our projects has been a complete success. So students get real world experience working on projects with actual companies as part of their education. Because all of this is housed in the same building in Boulder, it's all on the same floor, you'll often find students sort of being tapped by very early stage startups and say, hey, Ruby on Rails, could you help me with this one thing? And then maybe those small startups, they'll go through Boomtown or they'll get accepted to Techstars. They may either take some of our students as technical co-founders or later tap them to be employees. And we currently only offer our data science programs in San Francisco, but I'm happy to say that as of July, our data science programs will be starting in Colorado. And that's Galvin's.
Thank you, Jeff. I think what first comes to mind after listening to the panelists is the pipeline itself. There's this long-term pipeline, the short-term pipeline, in terms of what talent do we need right now? How does talent change? How do we prepare for the long-term future? I'm going to warm us up with some Q&A, but feel free to prepare your questions because there'll be opportunity for the audience to ask your questions as well. So, what do you see is the biggest need for graduating students today? Who would like to take that one?
I can start. Less about the technology, because we assume they come with that, and boy do they. That's usually not the problem. A lot of it is the business acumen. It's also the social skills that they lack. We end up having a lot of problems because they don't know how to interact with others, or they have expectations of the workplace that are not realistic. So in other words, we deal with new hires out of school that want a promotion in a year, and that's not how it works, you know, and so now you have to develop an expectation up front that is not positive before they ever hit the ground running, and that's not positive either. So trying to figure out how you mesh those together so that it's positive and we all win in the end is a big challenge for us.
Thank you.
I'll just add, I spoke earlier about the pipeline and the talent and the energy that we try to get the students to have. I'm also a hirer, so I employ 50 IT employees within the school district. So I'm competing with Boulder Aerospace, with the tech startups, and so that creates its own dynamic. And so we are looking for individuals that also want to give back, because oftentimes who gets hired in the government agencies are those that have a greater purpose than just coding or just doing engineering or just doing business. And so we look for those individuals to join our team.
On the information technology side, before I came to Galvanize, I worked for a large software consultancy. We probably hired 1 out of every 5 computer science graduates that came to us, which is pretty low. And what we found was, in the information technology side, relevant modern skills were lacking in almost every case. That there were some good fundamentals, but in terms of what the industry is actually doing and the types of things that they really do on a daily basis, we were going to have to train them on that from the ground up. And so we were finding there was a disconnect. There's sort of maybe a 15, 20-year gap in some cases between what they knew and what they needed to know. Not that it would take them 15 years, but the things that they know were more relevant 15 years ago than they are today.
Thank you.
I was just going to add real quickly, the business school, it's interesting that I feel like we're trying to hit on all these issues. I mentioned this whole student experience, for example. This is our shorthand way of trying to take ownership for some of those needs, whether it's social skills, try to make sure these kids understand they can't text the CEO and see if she's available for lunch today, which has happened. Trying to make sure that we've got, for example, students connected to relevant issues of the day that aren't 15 years stale. So, for example, we're deep into experiential learning as a way of taking
That there's a taxpayer bill of rights and that our population should vote on tax increases. I think fundamentally that's okay. The problem, though, is that in recessions, you ratchet down. That's the way the law is written. And you can't ratchet back up in the good times as fast as you ratchet it down. And so that leaves school districts and transportation funding and higher ed funding in this state where once you fall behind because of a recession, you never get back up to where you were before. And that is a problem.
I'll throw my 2 cents at it. So the question is Tabor, can we point at Tabor? Can you just strike out Tabor? Does the nightmare go away? And I think the very short answer is absolutely not. Because the other 49 states who do not have Tabor ideas or Tabor problems are going through the same thing. I was with a colleague last week from the University of Illinois, and they have produced internal 6, 8, and 10% cuts to be implemented in the next 55 days. The state of Louisiana is going through shocking planning. Again, this is all going to happen in the next 50 to 60 days, i.e. July 1st. Wisconsin is going through great things. Our country has made social decisions, maybe not intentionally, but unintentionally, because there's a competing pressure from pensions, healthcare, infrastructures, prisons. And so when you line up all these investment decisions, it's really hard to pick out any one area. But one of the things that higher ed suffers from is that we tend to be, either from a political perspective, in other words, where the votes reside, or from a pragmatic economic perspective, we tend to be towards the back end of that food chain. So it is true that it's exacerbated in the state of Colorado through Tabor. But even if we just said, boom, Tabor's gone, I don't see the issues going away per se. And this is not a Republican issue, even though the 3 states I mentioned are all Republican. It's not a Democratic issue. We have made decisions to, for example, underfund pensions for the last 40 years and underpay salaries. So we have provided low salaries and high pensions And that's been our compensation practice in the government sector for several decades. And now is the time to pay. And we may have, in the rearview mirror say that was an unfortunate decision we made, but we did make it.
I'd just like to add one thing about that. When I look back at where we were 20 years ago, community colleges were probably 75%, 80% state funded. And right now, Front Range is about 25% state funded, and I think CU is 6%, 4% now. And I think there's a change in the kind of the social contract about education. We believed at one point in the country that education was a public good, that there were public benefits from higher education that resonated through all of us. Having an educated citizenry benefited the whole population. And we kind of changed our model now to think that education is a private good, that people ought to pay their own way. And there are benefits to that. It reduces the tax burden on citizens. It allows us to channel money to other problems that perhaps exist because we didn't pay attention to them before. But there are costs to it too, because I think you lack some of the infrastructure to build a good talent pipeline, and when you don't have quite the talent pipeline, you don't have the economic growth that maybe you want. And I don't know exactly what the source of that change is. I think there's a lot of reasons behind it, but we probably have to do a better job of making the case for the public good from education so that people have a different vision of that.
We're seeing an interesting shift right now in the information technology world from, you mentioned high school graduates and going to college graduates. We have this concept of credentials. We're seeing, especially with these things like LinkedIn's acquisition of lynda.com, moving away from this concept of a time-based credentialing system to a skills-based credentialing system. And if you come to Galvanize and you say, hey, I'd like to go to your full stack program, we'll ask you if you graduated high school, we'll ask you if you graduated college, but this is more just information, right? We don't require it, and we don't really care. What we want to know is, do you have the interest in the aptitude? We're also seeing funding companies starting up, particularly in San Francisco, like Earnest, where they will loan money based on the potential for future earnings, coupled with code schools like Galvanize. So you can come in with, very, very little credit and still get a loan for $20,000 because they know that the success of the program is such that you have a very high probability of earning enough to pay back the loan. And I think we're at the very beginning of a sea change in credentialing and funding that could really have the potential to change the ability for people who didn't have other opportunities in high school and college to sort of enter the workforce today.
Thank you. I think we have another question in the back.
Yeah, good morning, David Skaggs. I'm a lawyer handling the federal lawsuit challenging TABOR. So I know you don't want to do a TABOR detour here, but just a technical correction. Ref C, which was passed a few years ago, got rid of that awful ratchet matter that Andrew, you described. So we're no longer in that box. And I agree with Dean Eikenberry. There's a lot more to the problem of funding higher education than TABOR, although it still is an ingredient. So I just wanted to...
Thank
so
you.
I'm glad to hear that TABOR's a non-issue to
Here's another question up front.
In 1996, I was chair of an elementary school improvement team, and I just left it doing conferences. So I thought, what does the workforce need in the way of skills, and how soon could we teach it? And we had Sandy Bracken and Andre Becker with Shirley Tune come in, do a workshop with parents, teachers, and administrators for a day. And it was wonderful. But I wonder if anyone else is doing that. Because it's the elementary school grades. When the sorting hat starts to work, kids give up because they're not good enough in fourth and fifth grade. Can the workforce and the colleges work closer with the elementary schools?
So, I think that's on a case-by-case basis. I know that he spoke about volunteerism. We have that in our schools from not only Ball, but other companies as well. We do know by third grade that if you start to fall behind in reading and some of your other skills, it's really hard to get you back on track. So we have intervention programs to try to ensure kids don't fall off the track. It's a very broad topic though, and I think it takes a lot of companies and partnerships for all of this to play out.
If I want to pick up on what Victor said, because it seems like playing all with others, maybe students learn patience, reasonable expectations, foreign language skills, how to think. And we don't even think of that as part of the elementary school curriculum, but it's what employers don't see when they need it,
Right.
they show up at work.
Right. From the technology perspective, I think that what we try to do is, kids today, you can't go in with fundamentals. You have to excite them with something, because everything they do is instant gratification. And so I think what we try to do is go in and show them all this cool stuff we do as the forefront. You know, this is what you can do, and this is how you have to do it, is you have to learn on the back end. That's not easy to do at that level, because they don't necessarily get it. But we do try, and it's engaging that interest and getting them excited about what does it mean when a rocket goes into the air? What does it mean when we have all the instruments on the Hubble, and what does the Hubble do, and what has the Hubble done for this country? Those kind of things get them engaged. It is a bigger question, though, to how then go into the technology piece of it. On the social side, it's definitely more challenging. Again, you're back to instant gratification with these kids, that they think they get things quickly, and I think we just have to start setting expectations younger. Starts with parents, I believe strongly, that they don't get everything that they want right away, and that builds into the workplace as well.
Andy, did you want to comment?
I was just going to say two things real quick. One, my wife's an elementary teacher, so I talk about these things incessantly. And secondly, I was just at a board meeting for St. Vrain Valley Schools where they were asking the same questions about their students, looking at saying, our students who are in kindergarten right now, what will the world be like in 13 years for them, and what do we need to prepare them for? There are probably these things happening in Boulder Valley, I don't know, but one of the things they've been doing with their Race to the Top grant is incorporating technology in pre-K and kindergarten in really interesting ways with cool little building blocks that you can make circuits out of, and you can start to understand the basic flow of circuits and ideas. And the challenge I think that's everybody's facing with that is how do you respond to the testing agenda and the Common Core and all of the needs to produce outcomes, and also incorporate that idea of creativity and ingenuity, and as well as learning the social skills. And I don't have a good answer for you on that one, because it's a thorny nut, and I think that people in K-12 who are trying to solve it are saints.
So we unfortunately do not have that level of STEM program. Race to the Top grant is a huge grant. St. Vrain is very fortunate to get that and be able to spread it across the entire district. That's all good. One of the challenges we have too with computer science is that if you take a computer science class in high school, it doesn't count towards, say, a math credit. It's an elective. It doesn't count towards a language credit. From my understanding is there's some thinking now on should that be able to fulfill, like a regular language, a Spanish or French credit. And so we're working on that right now. But it's a long, slow road to make these fundamental changes.
And I was curious, I wanted to move to another section of the pipeline, and I was hoping, Vicki, you could describe some of the successful indicators of how an intern moves to a full-time position.
Well, they have to be going into their senior year for one thing, or in their senior year coming out of it. But it is about work ethic. It's about not how smart they are necessarily, but that they're willing to do what it takes to get the job done, that they fit in, that they accept a mentorship in the way that it's meant to be, and that you don't know everything, and they often think they do. I have 2 kids in college who think they know everything. That they respect that the mentor that they've been assigned is someone they really can gain from, and to soak it in. And I think what our engineers want to see is that work ethic and the willingness to learn, and that they can get along and they can work on teams, and that they don't cause more problems than they solve. So it's a lot of that, and that's what we look for more than anything. And then the diversity also will help rise them to the top. If you have 2 equals, that may be the breaking point as well.
I just want to add one thing that you just mentioned. That we've been touring companies over the past a couple weeks from grants that we provide to companies. And I've heard that mantra again and again from software developers to machining companies, to everybody in between, about the inability to get folks to do teamwork. And I'm thinking about our own struggle to change our curriculum to build more team-based learning. And the students hate it. You know, the thing that students hate the most is if you say you have a group project, they just want to run. But it's what we hear again and again is what industry is demanding. And I think that's really the challenge on us, to figure out how do we not only incorporate that in our curriculum, but to teach our teachers better how to do group projects, and then to get students in the mindset about why this is really valuable. Kind of back to what you said originally, maybe that's something that we can also start to shape early on through parents, is that mindset that this is a skill that's really critically important. It's not just reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's this ability to work together. And that, I think it's kind of a circular flow.
And we hear very similar things at Workforce Boulder County, where if someone is working in a technical entry-level position and they move and they get promoted to a supervisory position, there's the skill for that soft skills regarding supervision, team building, engaging staff isn't always there, and they fail at that supervisory level in terms of that career path. Are there things that business and education can do together to build those areas, whether on the job or within the educational institutions?
So I'll add that recently, well, 4 years ago, we went to Google as our main platform within Boulder Valley. So that may not sound like a big deal, but one of the things that the Google platform gives you is the collaboration. So when there is group projects, they are in Google Docs. All of them, whether it's 2 people or 4 people or 6 people, they're working in the same documentation, and it forces at least some level of collaboration. It also, the tools in Google allow the teachers to see who's doing the work. And so that does provide opportunities for the teachers to actually educate on teamwork and the collaboration type skills that I think, Angie, you're referring to. Now, we do get pushback from Microsoft saying, hold it, you're going to graduate seniors who don't know what an Excel spreadsheet is. And I kind of counter that in the sense that they know what a spreadsheet is, and yes, they may not be a star at Excel, but if you have to learn Excel after doing a Google spreadsheet, you'll be able to get there. It is not that big a leap.
Thank you.
I'm seeing that a lot of problems in collaboration come down to people not having a good mindset. If you are familiar with Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset, this concept that you will improve on things with focus, time, and effort is largely missing from the students that are coming into our program, and it's something we focus on a lot in the information technology sector. You'll never know everything, ever. You'll actually never even be particularly good at one thing because that one thing continues to change. And that personal skill of comparing yourself to others and feeling bad and then becoming now defensive about your inability to do something is, I think, at the root of a lot of collaboration problems. I think our high schools are failing miserably at helping instill a growth mindset in students. I think the praise we give, I think our assessment structures, all of these things are reinforce this concept that people have natural talents and will be naturally good at something or not good at something, and we don't have the sort of ability to graduate students with this deep sense of like, oh, I'm just going to get better at this. And I think it goes into when you go into supervisory levels, when you go into other skills, there are a whole bunch of things we think of as fixed attributes of ourselves, like, oh, I'm a good manager, or I'm a naturally, like, I'm a people person. But these are all skills, and they're teachable, and they're learnable. And as you shift and as you change in different positions, the sort of Peter principle, like being promoted to your level of competence, right? Like, you'll see these very normal behaviors about becoming defensive and now blaming and now pushing away when you can't reconcile, well, I thought I'm a good people person, but this is not working. This is not my fault. I'm not reflective about this anymore, and I'm not leaning in and engaging. So we're trying to focus a lot on this concept of having a growth mindset. There's a lot of literature out there about it. Khan Academy is talking about, Sal Khan had a great video about growth mindset praise for children. And if I had to identify one aspect of collaboration, I would say it's that.
Thank you. I did watch that video, yeah.
It's
On the
fantastic.
growth mindset, yeah. So we have about 1 more minute, if anybody wants to have any last, very brief comment before we close. Okay. Well, please help me in thanking our panelists today.